Hello, everybody. This is Nick Newman with the Conscienticon, where we share practical, spiritual, occult wisdom. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about Terrence Howard and his delving into the occult world with his Oxford speech. Now, if you don't know who Terrence Howard is, he's the guy who played in Hustle and Flow. He's the pimp in that movie, and he's an actor who's been in a lot of stuff. He's also been in Iron Man. He played as I can't remember the guy's name, but he was basically the War Machine guy in that with the silver armor, and so all the important stuff. But the deal is, he got super famous, and then he made claims that he was into physics before this, and that he had figured out that there was a fundamental problem with mathematics, the very fundamental roots of mathematics, which have to do with multiplication. And he got really popular, and people said he's crazy. And what I thought was cool is that some of the stuff he was saying was super absurd and wild, and I don't agree with. And some of the stuff he was saying is, as far as I understand, true. And so we're going to go over that together in this episode. So sit back and relax, and let's get on this ride. Now, this ride is in 2x speed because I respect your time. And another cool thing about 2x speed is you can really see the huge gestures in people. Anything about body language becomes majorly pronounced when you speed up videotape. You get to see huge gestures because these things are subtle, right? But when you really see it sped up, you see how grandiose things are. You see everything seems to be intensified. Nervousness, relaxation, all of it seems to be very clear and translated. So follow along with me here, and we'll pause and we'll comment, and we're going to go on a sweet ride. So let's get this started.
Well, I know we're starting a bit late. We're trying to get some stuff loaded up that we won't be able to use, so we're going to do it a little differently now. We're going to do it manually, eye to eye, person to person. I'm Terrence Howard, and I'm so honored to have been invited here to speak at Oxford. Chris is so magnificent. He's been the kindest person, and he's really an angel for you guys because he can bring a ton of people here just with his kind words. How many of you are interested in acting?
All right, my friends. First thing is first. Whenever you interact with somebody, especially in a setting like this, you need to be asking yourself first, what is the intention of that individual? What do they want to convey? What are they trying to do? And is it inevitably practical or not? Have they actually proven anything? Have they actually done something that no one else has done? Or is it remain in the world of speculation? So you want to keep that in the back of your mind anytime you are engaging with anyone who's highly charismatic, because the beginning of this, he's actually going to set everybody up. He's softened them up to believe some of the grandiose things that he's about to say. So just watch for that. Watch how he butters everybody up before he gets to the point.
None. Great. Maybe a couple of y'all. So, I didn't have any training as an actor, right? No? I grew up in a real bad part of Cleveland, Ohio. Wore little girls' dresses for the first 2 years of my life because we didn't have any money for clothes for me. I managed to climb my way out of there by doing a fancy little thing called lying. You guys do any of that? Back in 1986, when I started working in this business, there was no thing called the internet. So when I put my first resume together, since I was trying to go and get jobs, I'd go knock at doors and go and do castings, and nobody would take me seriously because I didn't have an agent and I didn't have a resume. So I put together a 3-page resume of all the projects that I wanted to do. And I put my name on them, starring in all these things, and that was my first resume. And it got me into the door, and as time went on over the last 35 years, I filled up that thing, so it's no more lies on my resume. It's all truth. But it wasn't lies then, it was what I was going to make happen. And that's what I want to say. Most of what you are trying to accomplish today or tomorrow is the same thing you were trying to accomplish 20 years ago. You're the same person that you were then. If you lose that little...
This, in my opinion, is where the dangerous thinking starts to kind of seep in. So I say that because he is saying that he started with a list of lies that he made true. And this refers to the law of attraction. So he's manifesting these things. He's like, they're not true yet, but I'll put them on a resume and then I'll make them true. And now that I live in existence where I have made these things true, perhaps I can just believe the lie long enough until the rest of the universe transmutes around the lie. Actors, I call this the Jim Carrey thing. All right. This is the Jim Carrey phenomenon. This is what happens when you have actors like him who've started really in a rough spot. Jim Carrey wrote $1 million check to himself that he was inevitably going to cash. So the $1 million check was more like a lie as well, something that he was going to make happen. And it did happen. And so what happens is these people, they start so low and then they see the power of self-belief and the power of their effort, and then they proceed forward, and then stuff starts to happen. Good things start to happen to them. Their world starts to transmute into something that they want. And then they start to believe, wow, you know, if I want something to be true, all I got to do is believe in it with enough conviction that it manifests. Now, what's neat is, I believe that way of going through life is really powerful in the right context. Self-belief might be one of the most powerful tools that you and I have as creatures that exist. It's absolute hope in yourself, in your trajectory for the future, is one of the most powerful things that anyone can have. And that is because it is just accepting that you're playing the game, and that by playing the game, the odds might go in your favor, which allows you to take more risk, which increases the odds of good things happening to you, and on and on and on. But the problem with it is that once these people start so low and they see they craft their reality and whatever they want to manifest, they start to think that they're God and that they can beat the game. And the game is fundamental suffering and life and death. That is the game. And so then they start going down these crazy rabbit holes where they say that no one exists, no one's really real, the ego is an illusion. They start going down these rabbit holes like this because the problem is, this is fundamental to understand, that you and I are of God, but we are not God. That is very different. God would be defined as everything that is, has always been, always will be, and is infinite. It's everything. But you and I exist as human beings that are a fraction of finitude within the infinite. And so it means we have minor powers of the infinite, but we exist in this world that is very constrained, and it's constrained by laws imposed on itself, which is everything else that is you, right? So to control those things that are also part of you, or to try to ignore those rules that are set in place, you're ignoring rules that you set in place as the divine. So you are really kind of hurting yourself all the time. That's when you ignore those fundamental things of reality, which is life and death and suffering, absolute core fundamental things to existence. You start to think that you can break that. You can end up actually just causing a lot of harm to people, creating false hope, and really just setting back progress. And in this case, he might have really set back a lot of time for these students. But I digress here. Let's continue forward.
Spark that kept you motivated. That little piece, like, this is my vocation. I love acting half the time, but there's some downfalls of it. You know, a lot of actors end up with personality, identity crisis and conflicts because you have so many characters you're playing. And if you really commit to the characters, you become like a piece of clothing. And your body becomes what they put on. And the character has a tendency of wanting to own you. They don't let go. What you saw in Anthony Hopkins and Hannibal Lecter, that monster lives in him. That's why we believed it. He had to tap into something very ugly in our human nature sometimes. And as an actor, sometimes I tap into beautiful things. But like with Lucius, and the character I play with Lucius, his life is filled with turmoil. So 90% of the day I'm walking around carrying his turmoil and also the turmoil for me and my own family. And then how do you have time to really bring yourself back to who you are? Because that's the most important thing. That's the thing that's going to bother you more than anything else. You will look at yourself one day and you won't know who you are because you don't remember who you were. You know, sometime along the way, or maybe at 13 or 14, we let go of the little person that kept us going. That little person that was always there, I got you, man. I'm here, I got you. Don't go in there, I ain't going in there. That person, when we get about 13 or 14, we get embarrassed of him. And we push him aside and we don't listen to him anymore. And he's always knocking. Hey, hey. And after so long of a time, maybe 10, 15 years, you don't even know him. You show up.
So it's an interesting thing as well. It happened to Jim Carrey. So I'm saying this is the Jim Carrey problem. When you were an actor and you're pretending to be someone else, the neurons in your brain, you're actually moving little cells. They make new connections. And they make new connections because they're establishing a pattern of behavior and thoughts and habits. And this structure, being a physical thing, grows. The more you pretend to be a thing, the more that grows, the more it starts to latch onto memories and help construct new future versions of itself to make itself more useful. And that's why these people end up with feeling alienated within their own body, like they're just becoming someone else that manifests in a vessel of flesh. But it's really throwing out that the thing manifesting that personality is the flesh itself crafting it. So the more you believe in a thing, the more it grows, that section of your brain, those neurons that are connecting. It really does become its own kind of thing. But it is still you, and you, the being, the whole being, decided to craft it. So you can uncraft it and change it. And that's a painful process if you really think about it. You're forcing parts of your body to create new structure and then just abandoning it because the movie is over, right? You don't have to be that person anymore. This happens a lot. This happens when people play D&D for a long time. They pretend to be a character for a long time. That part of your psyche actually becomes its own personality, and it manifests as a real neural structure within you. So this isn't like, oh, I'm just imagining this. Like, these are patterns, a true reflection of reality, a new personality within you. So when you pretend to be something, inevitably you do start to become it. Now, it doesn't allow you to bend the rules of Newtonian physics or anything like that, but it does definitely change the probabilities of behaviors that you're going to exhibit in the future.
Up at your own door and you don't even know who you are. Your family doesn't know who you are. So it's important, no matter what you do, no matter what challenges you go through, you remember who you are.
And this is him alluding that you're God. This is him beginning to allude to the truth that everyone is God. Or, like I said, this ought to be corrected. We are of God. We are not God. We are of God. So he is in the space of thinking he is God. But let's continue.
You may think you've been here for 20 years on this planet, but we know that energy, it is forever. It doesn't die. It continually recycles itself. So you know that you've been a trilobite 350 million years ago, or some part of it. Some parts of you were part of a pterodactyl. Every one of us have been a part of everything in this universe. So if we tap into those things in ourselves and remember those things in ourselves, we have that power. Now, my vocation has been an actor. And
what power is he talking about, really? He's saying the power of knowing what you really are, which is the whole show, right? You and I exist as a fraction of the whole eternal show. And that death is an illusion, and that everything, all we're always doing is just waking up parts of ourselves. That's what he's alluding to. But what does this do, and what does this have to do with disproving mathematics? So, as I said before, we're trying to figure out what he's wanting as an individual. And what he's wanting right now is to beat the game. And he thinks he can beat the game by believing in something so hard that it manifests true. And who knows? Maybe there's a version of Terrence who hopped into another dimension and he manifests himself in that dimension, in that world where math is different. And maybe we're stuck with the husk that is him now in this world where his math is wrong. But we will continue.
That I've been able to take care of my family as an actor, but that's never been my passion. I was an actor because it was like Jesus walking on water for tips, because he could do it. That's what he did. It was a natural thing for him. I've always been an empath. I've always been emotionally connected to everything. But the thing that I was most spiritually connected to, that was my driving force, was physics. It was wondering how the universe really came to be. And I fell in love with this thing called the flower of life. You guys know Da Vinci. Do you know what he spent most of his life trying to figure out? Who in here knows the flower of life? Couple? I'm gonna get you something.
I like how he asks this crowd of students if they know who Da Vinci is. That's really funny, because he's leveraging. There's a bias out there where if you say something, if you make a claim that is related to somebody who's old or historical or text that's historical, somehow it's more true that way. But he didn't know Da Vinci. I didn't know Da Vinci. It would be rad to have known Da Vinci, I'm sure. But of course, these guys know who Leonardo da Vinci is. Of course.
Because I want you guys to know. Huh? Sorry, hold it. No, I'm holding it. I want you guys to know about a 6,000-year-old secret. 6,000 years, mankind has been trying to
bias.
decipher this one little thing called the flower of life. Now, do you know the flower of life? Have you guys ever seen this before? Now, you know this is one of the oldest symbols in human history, right? Or do you not know? This symbol was found in the Temple of Osiris in Egypt, and it had been molecularly burned into the wall. And it's 6,000 years old. The same symbol has been found in the forbidden temples in China.
Molecularly burned into the wall. Like he's just trying to sound smarter. I mean, but the flower of life is an amazing symbol. There are so many cool mathematical things you can do with the flower of life, and it directly relates with all sorts of manifestations of reality. But our math works with it still. So I still don't know what he's getting at, and we will see.
Sitting under the foo-foo dogs, and the foot on it, the flower of life, saying whoever controlled that flower of life controlled the universe. There were secrets in that flower of life that Da Vinci spent his whole life trying to uncover. There were secrets in that flower of life that Newton spent his whole life in secret trying to uncover. The same secrets that Pythagoras was desperately trying to uncover. But the problem was, they kept seeing this in a two-dimensional space. They couldn't get it out of this two-dimensional frame, and as a result, they got stuck in this plane, a flat plane. Now, what Da Vinci and all of them wanted to do, they were trying to find a way to bring this flower to life, because what is inside of it? Well, apparently, there were secrets inside of it. Shapes, they got the Merkaba and all of those other things out of it. But they were misled by something I think called a straight line. You guys believe in straight lines? You believe there's straight lines in the universe? Well, let me hit you with something. All energy in the universe is expressed in what? It's in motion. If something is still, there's no energy. Kinetic, right? All motion is expressed in what? You look at galaxies. Are they expressed in straight lines? Expressed in vortices. All vortices are expressed in what? Waves. All waves are curved. Show me a straight line in nature. You show me where platonic solids come from. Where do they have their foundations in our universe? Are there any straight lines? If you look at anything, there are no straight lines. That's been the mistake. We've been looking at these straight lines, this Euclidean way of thinking, and missing the curvature of nature. So here we are, back with the curvature of nature. And you have all these little pieces. Now, this has always been an information system. So compare some of these points. Take a point here and say, well, what's the space in between all of these things? Now, they've said that all the in-between spaces, if this is the Earth and this is the moon right here, all this in-between space is filled with what? A void. There's nothing in the void. Well, I found that there is something in the void. The elementary fundamental particles that they've been searching for at the CERN collider, the Hadron Collider in CERN, I found that their energy signatures match perfectly to some of the pieces that I was able to pull out of here. So I'm gonna bring some of those now. 5 minutes? Am I good?
So he's talking about there being no straight lines in reality. As far as I understand, that's true. There's no such thing as a straight line. However, there's no such thing as numbers either. These are constructs, and they're tools. They're mental constructs that we use in order to approximate reality, because measuring with curves is got way more numbers going on. Reality, if math was an absolute, direct, perfect reflection of reality, the numbers would be infinite. We wouldn't be able to do anything with it. It'd be too crazy to calculate, which is why our brains, first of all, invented the straight line, the perception of a straight line, because it's doing the same thing. It's like, okay, it's straight, takes away this infiniteness of a curved reality, but it is just good enough to allow us to survive. And that's what's happening. So these guys use math with straight lines in order to get approximations of things that are good enough. Because if we were playing with real numbers, we just would not have the computational power to be able to do that. Maybe we will create systems like that that can do that in the future with quantum computers and such. But straight lines, whether or not they're real, doesn't matter. They are very, very useful.
Okay. Now, all of this was supposed to be on a projector for you guys. I don't have that. So what I do have is a bit of a Chanel bag, or an old Chanel bag, a box, as it were. And we're going to talk about a couple of items in here that are so hard to even express here. Afterwards, you're going to have to just take a look at these. My God, I won't have the time to do
I'm just going to skip that part.
I couldn't show you, but...
because he's digging for stuff he doesn't have. Which is wild that he's not prepared in that way. Maybe his like... maybe his helper or whatever messed that up, but that's crazy for him to go there. And it shows me he's working on belief. And, which there's nothing wrong with working on belief in scenarios when belief is all you got. But this guy could have made sure that was there and pulled it out and been fine. But he was just going to wing it because he's trusting the manifestation of his own delusions. I'm so sorry to say.
Can I go on? Yep, you're good. Mm-hmm. I can't, without being able to show the pieces.
By the way, I'll stop and say there's nothing wrong with being caught in a delusion, because you really can't You really need a hand out of it usually. And I think there's no way, I say this is a delusion in the sense that he's not up here lying on the stage. He is truly believing that he has figured out some sort of fundamental change to mathematics that's going to allow us to create infinite energy and things like this. He really believes that. He believes that these people that he's talking to are so analytical and so straight lined that if only they would curve a little bit and see this kind of perspective, then everything would open up. That flower of life would open up and then we would fix everything. But this is coming from, as far as I understand, this is my assumption, this is coming from a man who's trying to beat the game, who's trying to be God and believe something hard enough that it just becomes true. Because, and I think he's going to have a rough time with that. It's been 6 years and I haven't seen him cure cancer or anything like that, which he's about to talk about. So bear with me.
It's a whole different monster. But all of these wave conjugations, all of these states of matter, all of these things, it's time for that to be changed now. We have changed all of our buildings to be aerodynamic. Our airplanes are no longer based on a two-dimensional Euclidean way of life. But our math is still based on a two-dimensional way. And I think in order for us to reach the future, we have to examine that. Do you guys know about loops in math? Do you believe in loops? Do you know the square root of 2? Do you think that's a loop? Do you believe that the square root of 2 is the square root of 2? Yes, no? Hands up, no? Hello? Oh, I want y'all to take out your phone for a minute then. We're going to do one thing. Everybody got a phone? Put it on your calculator and turn it to the side so you can get all the long numbers out of it. Okay? Now I want you to put in 2 and square root it. 2, hit the square root. You'll get 1.414213562373095, ... right? Now I want you guys to do me a favor. Cube it. It'll see right over there, it'll be x to the 3. Can y'all do it? Have you cubed it? It'll see 2.828427121746190. Now that makes sense. I want you guys to do me a favor. Divide it by 2. Get that number? Cube it again. Divide by 2, cube it again, and I want you to do that until the end of your lives. And that number will still come up with 2.828427121746190. Any other number that you, above 2, that you put in and you cube and you square and divide by 2, by the 6th operation, it has moved into an exponential number that you can't even imagine. Any number below 2 that you do that same operation with, it will go into an exponentially small matter and number. This is what we call a loop.
So you see some of the people in the crowd start to giggle because there's in the world of spirituality, there is a level of deep arrogance to certain people when they're questioning people who do physics and who are doctors and mathematicians and stuff. There's a deep level of arrogance in the sense that they think these people are just somehow almost autistic. They're almost so black and white with their thinking that they just can't see the vibrancy of the universe like they can, right? When it's really the opposite. He's too far out there in fantasy to be able to look at this math and say, how many people before me were here questioning this? He's not the first person to ask this question. This is not something he came up with. This is something, well, maybe he did come up with it on his own in this iteration of time, right? But people before him have already asked this question. And I think it's really disgusting to sit and think that he's the first one to ask that question. I'm not sure if he says that or not, but he figured it out. He figured this stuff out, that these loops in math work. And really, if you look at the square root times itself 3 times, you get a cancellation of 2 of the square roots. All right. Now, I'm not that good at math, but I can see that. And I can see that square rooting 2 by itself and then dividing by 2 creates a loop. And that's just one of the phenomenons that you have happening when you square root 2. It's not the only number that you can do that to. But it just shows me that there's some deep arrogance going on here. And he's like, okay, math shouldn't ever loop. Even though, as before, we said math is an abstraction. It's not a direct reflection of the universe. It's an abstraction, and it is a tool on its own. So the tool itself can change and all of this, but the tool is there because it requires specific inputs. If you're playing with the tool itself, it becomes nonsensical very quickly. So I digress. But like I said, I'm not that good at math. Maybe he is right. I have to have the humility to know that I'm not as educated as all the students in that room. Maybe I'm not as educated as Terrence Howard is, but I will say there's some deep arrogance going on when you think that no one else would have figured this out by now. That's kind of something.
It is illogical, it doesn't make sense, and it does not make math make sense. So these are some things that I'm bringing to the fore and that I would like to question. I would like to audit the world of mathematics, and I would like to audit how we view the Platonic solids, because I think the new wave conjugations will tell a better story of how our world works. And that's it.
So he's talking about new wave conjugations, which I think is his way of saying curved space or curved reality, dealing with curves instead of straight lines. And that somehow, if he changes this fundamental, one of these fundamental things he's going to get to, that will change that and make things a direct reflection, make mathematics a direct reflection of reality, which is an interesting thing. I thought that was something that really left hook to me when I was listening to this. I was like, wow, I've never actually thought about that. I thought math is a tool, concept that can be used to overlay on top of reality and make rough approximations of things, rough predictions of things. Math really is magic, my friends. It is the truest magic I know, other than our very existence in this moment. Math, he's trying to say that it doesn't directly overlay on reality, but I don't think it was ever really supposed to. But we'll continue.
It wasn't quite what I thought, Chris.
Yeah,
but I wanted my pictures. You guys got it, and y'all won't even have time afterwards. But I spent 45 years searching these things out and trying to figure out what the universe how it really worked. And we've come to find that the universe, they are abandoning the standard model, the ideas of black holes and dark matter, for an electric model of the universe that is in.
When somebody says they spent that many years working on something, usually they mean that they're going to a place for 8 hours and thinking about that thing. They're not making movies on the side and all that stuff. So I think that's a gross exaggeration to say that. And damn, the audacity to assume that these people in this room ain't spent more time on this math than him is something else to me.
Response to the Birkin currents and all these things. It's a better version, a better vision of how we should see the universe. That's how I see it, and I think it should be explored.
So just to add some context to this, Terrence and I have spent the afternoon together, and Terrence has showed me a lot of this and explained to my feeble mind basically what he's theorizing. I thought
explain to our feeble minds. Did you hear that? Did you hear that slip that guy threw in there? Because he's like, all right, he's saying the same thing. Like, wow, you're quite arrogant to come in this room and act like we haven't done our due diligence, and that everyone in here isn't in here because they actually care about this stuff. They've sacrificed elements of their lives to focus on this stuff. And to see, I think that guy on the left with the ponytail knew something about that loop he was referring to, the square root of 2 loop. They already knew what I was saying, but we'll continue.
The things that you showed me that I thought were really good were how you explain the story about how originally the flower of life, everybody just followed the lines and didn't understand the space. And you have the quite good models in there
Yes.
of how they connect together and how you have managed to put it into a 3D shape rather than just people looking at 2D. Perhaps you want to explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, the idea of, like one of the things I've been saying, the Euclidean mindset has kept us so locked away. Like there's tons of paperwork of Da Vinci working on the flower of life and trying to unravel it. But every single existence, every single example, you see him making straight lines and trying to make these straight lines bend in, and therefore he was never able to open it up. Because all the universe is curved, all space is curved. And as a result, what I was doing in trying to find these straight lines, I abandoned the idea of a straight line. The shortest distance between 2 points is curved space, because you cannot force your way straight through space. Even electricity, as it moves from a southern plane to a northern plane, it always goes northeast in its direction. And magnetism, as it expands out, it goes southwesterly. And that's the spin. That's how you always know whether it's magnetism or electricity. It's the spin. Is it northeast or is it southwest? But in trying to define curved matter, I'm so sorry, I get so distracted. Trying to define the spaces, it allowed me to see that all of these in between, what we have been dealing with is these petals. All of mankind dealt with these petals, but it's these other shapes that we've ignored constantly. Well, those other shapes were the in-between spaces. They were the things that filled up the vacuum of space. And all these particles that I have, I think, are the full proof of that. And it is also the full proof of the wave-particle argument.
Yeah. Do you want to also explain a little bit about what your intention was in sort of bringing this up? And sort of because something you said was the next step is like, how do you apply this?
Well, here we are on this planet. Can I do that point? Our planet is moving away from our sun at 6 inches a year. You guys know that. 15 centimeters a year, our planet is pushing away from the sun. So in less than 500 million years, our planet will be out of the Goldilocks zone. We'll be somewhere near where Mars is, somewhere halfway between there. So life will not be able to be sustained on this planet anymore. So So if we're going to be able to sustain ourselves as a species, we have to become interstellar. Not just interplanetary, we have to become interstellar. But with approximations, you cannot become interstellar. You cannot become interstellar with a point that will take you all the way over here with a straight line when the actual event is taking place over here. When you're going 600 quadrillion miles, you can't make a mistake. You need precision. And that's what the math is about. These pieces predict the natural distribution of matter and the distribution of where you can find yourself in that space. And I'm confident behind it. For 40 years, I've worked on this. And I think it's ready.
Right on. So that's what he was saying before. You do need not approximation. You need precision, right? But the amount of calculations required to be able to do some of this stuff that we are trying to do are requiring systems that are enormous and consume enormous amounts of energy. And that is the whole point of creating these quantum computers. The whole point is being able to crunch as much data as possible. Because when you are dealing with a system within a reality, trying to calculate phenomenon of the reality that it is in, it requires calculations beyond itself. And this is Goddard's incompleteness theorem. This is what he's saying. Any agent within a system can never prove or disprove the reality of that system. It can never break past it. So you know there are things that you can't know being part of that system. So, example, I can predict everything that will happen if I run a game of Grand Theft Auto on my computer. I can probably predict every single thing that will happen, so long as I don't acknowledge that there's quantum particles falling through the sky and hitting bits of the processor and all that and changing ones to zeros every now and again. But if that's not going on, I can pretty much predict every single thing that will happen in that game given enough time. And that's crazy complicated already. And now you're saying that we're going to be doing this for reality? Well, nobody, it's not that the math is wrong, bro. It's the amount of calculation required is too intense to land on anything that would be useful. And there's too many things that we just don't know. So straight lines work just fine.
I've sat also at lunch, basically trying to get my head around this, and also I was very, very, very skeptical, and I put my hands up and say that. And one of the things that you mentioned was about how this applies to, I think it was the electric sun model, and that's where it's a theory that suggests that the sun is powered from external forces rather than nuclear fusion, which is the general consensus among the scientists. And the reason for that is because there's not a production there's no evidence to suggest that the byproduct neutrinos are there. And what Terrence is trying to prove, I think, is that because the fact that you can't detect whether neutrinos are there or not, there must be another way.
I believe Terrence is a guy who's spent a lot of time around amateurs, and he said this stuff and blown their minds. But like, I'm hearing it, and at first I was really impressed with all of the stuff he was throwing out, because I was caught up in the woo of him being the hustle and flow guy saying this stuff. Like, whoa, he's talking about stuff that I like. But I just dabbled in this stuff. I don't live it like some people do. And the people that live this stuff, they're not going with this. They're not following. They're not smelling what he's stepping in.
which they're powered. My argument to him is that to suggest that neutrinos don't exist, because we have a lot of evidence to not know that they're physically there, but a lot of the effects and how they interplay with other things, to suggest that they don't exist is not only to get rid of that small theory, but also quite a lot of other huge laws of physics.
Are they laws or are they ideas of physics?
Well, why don't you respond to that and talk about how a lot of people have that sort of narrow mindset? You talk about identity.
Yeah, the identity element, the things that make our math work. Like,
so we already know how that guy feels. He already feels like he's arrogant, because he made that passive little slip earlier.
What's 1 times 1? What'd you say, 1? It equals 1? Now, what would Newton say is that? Action times an action. That's a reaction, right? Anybody in here that thinks 1 times 1 equals 1, then you give me 2 pounds and I'll give you a pound back. And we'll call that even, right? Because 1 times 1 equals 1. An unbalanced equation. What we need to do is, the first thing in math is you're supposed to have a balanced equation. 1 times 1 equaling 1 is an unbalanced equation. But the identity element, which is like the Jim Crow laws of the 60s, they say that anything multiplied by 1 becomes that same number as itself. Well, the laws of physics has to break down in order for that to take place. Action and reaction for 1 times 1 to equal 1. In comparison to if I said, what's a dollar times a dollar? Anybody know it's a dollar? Well, what's a dime times a dime, or 10 pence?
10 pence, yeah.
10 pence times 10 pence? That's a pound, right? 10 pence times 10 pence? Is that right, honey? What about 100 pence times 100 pence? That's a dollar times a pound, right? That's $100, ain't it? What about a quarter? What about 4 quarters times 4 quarters? That's a dollar, right? That's a pound, right?
He said, is that right, honey? And he said it was a Jim. He's like, these are like the Jim Crow laws. All right.
Well, that's $4. Now, all of these things are legal. The banks can say $1 times $1 is $1 and give you that. Or the banks can say to a friend, $1 times $1 is a quarter times a quarter. It's 4 quarters times 4 quarters, and give that person $4. They can say to another person, $1 times $1 is 100 pence times 100 pence. That person gets $100. So that money is generated. And this is all legal. Do you think it's not happening in the banks? This is what 1 times 1 equaling 1 has got us. This inconsistency of our monies and our economy is sitting in the balance. And the rest of our future is sitting in the balance because our science has been stunted as a result of the problems in mathematics, because math asks for the basic laws of physics to break down in order for 1 times 1 to equal 1. In order for 1 times 0 to equal nothing, laws of conservation of energy has to disappear. And math is, the founding laws of math is supposed to support the laws of physics. They are arm in arm. They cannot be in controversy with each other. So we need an audit on the Platonic solids, we need an audit on the square root of 2, and we need an audit on action and reaction. Or we either got to get rid of, we say 1 times 1 equals 1 and there's no action and reaction. One or the other, you can't have both.
So his problem comes from a misunderstanding of how multiplication works. So he's saying that when you times something by something, the product, you end up getting a product, which is that many things added up together. Makes sense, right? But really what's going on is we're not timesing apples by apples. We're not timesing pennies by pennies. What we're timesing is pennies times instances, or apples times instances. So for example, if I said we had 2 times 1, and the 1 are apples, and the 2 is instances, we would have 2 instances of apples, which would give us 2 apples. And if it was 1 instance of 1 apple, it'd be 1 apple. But what's cool, I liked how he was saying this, is that each side of the equation should be balanced. Right? 1 times 1 equals 1. It wouldn't make sense because you have one on this side and 2 1s on the other side. So he's saying that doesn't make sense. How did you get the 2 1s? But like we were saying before, math is a tool. It's a way of conceiving things. And it's not 1 apple times 1 apple. It is 1 instance times the 1 thing equals the 1 thing. And so there's that context that's being thrown out. And that 1 times 1 can be reduced to 1, which equals 1. So it's always been fair. It just seems a little wild when you're taking one thing times another thing. But we're never timesing things by things. But if you're getting rid of that annotation going on where I'm saying it's 1 instance of a thing, when you throw that out, then it doesn't make sense, which is kind of interesting to think about. If you just got 2 numbers, 1 and a 1 equaling a 1, doesn't make a lot of sense. And that's what he's saying. And he's saying that 1 times 1 should really equal 2. Because on one side you have 2 1s, and the other side should be balanced and give you 2 1s, which is 2. But that other side wasn't completed. And that's what everybody else is saying. It wasn't reduced enough. And so it ends up being the same thing anyway. But let's continue.
And until we make that change, we're in trouble.
We're in trouble
as a species.
Great. Should we open up to questions?
No, I don't want to talk to them.
Terrence. What kind of trouble?
Come on.
If you have a question,
Let me
raise your
know.
hand nice and high. You can ask about the physics or the acting. Terrence,
Yeah.
happy to go. Yeah, let's start with
He's
you.
a lawyer physicist. I'm an actor physicist.
It's okay. He's just a physicist.
Thank you for coming. I just had a question about kind of acting and physics as well. Just like I know that you said that physics was your drive and like how you are doing acting, and I just want to know like how you got academically like interested in physics itself. I kind of feel like they're a little bit different, but I think the bridge that you have between them are really cool.
No, well, everything is based on chemical reactions. In order for me to become a character, I have to change my chemical composition of how I'm thinking. As a result, that changes how I position myself, which changes how the heat is generated and transferred out of my body. Everything comes down to chemistry. You know, so acting in physics, in physics, when 2 things are drawn to each other, it's because they're of similar charge. It's not positive, because they say negatives attract. But cold air drops down. Does it attract to the hot air rising up? No, it passes right by each other. Because opposites don't attract. It's positives that attract to each other. 2 positives drawn to each other, 2 negatives discharge each other. So it's all about physics to me. It's all about chemistry, and it's how another actor is relating to me. A slight change in his body language changes my tone.
I
It's
don't
all
agree with
physics.
that part. The negative, positive part, don't agree with that.
Anyone? Yeah, let's go to you.
But yeah.
Hey, Terrence. My name is Garrett. I'm originally
Manifestation
from Atlanta,
is
Georgia.
Yes.
And so earlier you mentioned about acting, and I just had a question about the entertainment industry. Being that I'm from Atlanta, everyone swears they're a rapper or that they can rap. Even my grandma said she was dropping a gospel mixtape. So that's dropping this spring, apparently. And so I have an older brother who actually wants to get into the music industry. And it got me thinking about Hustle and Flow. It probably wasn't as gritty as Hustle and Flow was, but he's really trying to get his name out there. And so my question to you is, what advice would you have for someone who's trying to break into the entertainment industry, whether it be acting or music? Also, I got a copy of his songs on here if you want to listen to it on the way back home.
Well, you just said it right. You said break into the business. How do you break into something?
Oh, well, enter the business. If that's
No, you had it right. Because they don't want you in there. Everybody else wants that job. They're trying to keep you out. So you have to break into the business. How do you break into something? It's a little cunning involved in that. And there's a little violence involved in that. It's aggression involved in breaking into something. So there's passion involved in that. And that passion is what's going to drive you. Wherever you're supposed to be. I can tell you, go over to, to 5th and Dunbar, and it's going to happen for you over there. It's not going to happen there. It's going to happen for you when you actively work in concert with your desires. So you want to be an actor? You don't go to Saudi Arabia. You got to go to LA or New York in the States. And you do your time there. And my thing is, I have no toleration for rivalry whatsoever.
He contradicts himself
it's
there.
Not black eyes.
Saying that you have to work in concert with your desires. But he's like, you want to be an actor, you got to go to Hollywood. It's like, what? I thought all I had to do is align with my desires. What if I want to be an actor in the middle of Missouri? Come on, man. Like, so he's really actively contradicting himself. He's like, you do have to meet reality over here to manifest, which I agree with. You got to align this external reality with your internal reality in order to manifest the things that you want. I absolutely agree with that. But he's like, oh yeah, you just get your desires aligned. It's not enough. But I think that's interesting because he's trying to manifest a reality where he's a famous scientist just by believing in it hard enough. I guess he's going to Oxford here to change this reality, this version of reality, because Terrence is a max level wizard, twisting space time, changing math, and curing cancer, which we're going to get to, by the way. Hold on.
He knows this for me. It's life or death when I'm in that ring. And that ring is the set and the stage for me. So I'm coming in there to dismantle you. I'm coming in there to take away any falsehood that you have, that you were carrying yourself with. I want to shake that up with truth, and to where you don't even know your lines afterwards, that you're just sitting there. So if you can't come in ready for life or death, you think it's a black eye, bloody nose, you will lose your life in that game. You go in and you destroy them, and you break into the business however you have to.
Great. Yeah, let's go to you, Nicholas. Yeah, you stand up.
So my question is, when you go to play parts or decide on what exactly you want to play in a movie or a series, do you look for specific things in a character that you're going to portray, or do you just immerse yourself into the character and see how it goes from there?
Yeah, I don't do all that little tricky stuff about, let me go in this character reads this or any of that stuff. You know me, I sit there and I try and look for what resonates with the character. Ooh, that suck. I hate that.
Okay, the other one.
If the truth is in the character, if the character is written well, you don't have to do anything. All you do is have to sit there and say the words. And somehow in the words, it's just little bells like playing Candy Crush, little things just pop up out of nowhere, and you're just doing it, and you get lost in it. If you allow yourself, it's just a river, man. Get naked and ride in it and jump out when you get cold. But don't be afraid of the rapids. Don't be afraid of the rocks. You just
apply that to everything.
Jump out of the airplane and
Great
say,
advice.
hell with it.
Great, thanks for that question. Yeah, let's go to you in the red jumper.
Thank you for coming. I wanted to ask a question. You seem to be sitting on a wealth of knowledge and something you've been working on for 40 years. I was going to ask, how are you living day-to-day life knowing that the rest of the world is doing it, quote unquote, incorrectly?
Well, it's been 40 years of me dancing on this thing. For 40 years, I was told I was wrong. For 40 years, I was told that, the platonic solids and all those were the solids. You have to have faith in self. All of this, I can sit up here and tell you guys that, I'm the smartest man in the world. I figured out what Vinci and none of them could do. The truth is, you really want the truth? This may be crazier than the fiction. The truth is, I woke up inside my mother's womb at about 6 months of age. I woke up inside of there. Like, boom. I don't know what had happened. Maybe my mother went through some trauma or whatever, but I woke up and I was, oh, God, I'm here. Don't forget. This is truth. Don't forget. Just go by. Every once in a while, I'll think about something, this will come over. And I didn't know it was my hand. I thought it was a friend. I had a whole name for it. Inside that womb, you were conscious. You woke up with our son Kieran, when he was my wife was 6 months pregnant. We would put the light on her stomach, and he would follow it and push on it. And we put the music, we put it all the way over to the other side, and he would crawl all the way over to the other side of the stomach and push at the light with the music. So what I'm saying to you, you are conscious inside the womb, but we have no common frame of reference. But I remember, don't forget, because I knew I'd been here. Don't forget. You know what I didn't want to forget? This flower fly.
You know how cool that is? That's one of the coolest things he said at the speech is that there's no frame of reference for consciousness at certain times. Really true. Really cool to think about. I enjoy Vsauce. The creator of Vsauce did a challenge where he put himself in a white room and he had no other stimulus for several days. I think it was 7 days in a white room with no other stimulus. And he said that he lost track of time and the day-night cycle and all of this. And then his memories didn't make a lot of sense. He didn't know when he was asleep or when he was dreaming. And he said that he thought that that's probably what it would be like to exist as maybe a bug, to have a different form of consciousness in that the memory is gone. So you exist from every moment to moment to moment to moment, but the memory is gone or context is gone. You don't know what you are, where you are. You just are. You just are being. And what a wild thing. Imagine being conscious and remembering being in the womb. That's a crazy thing. Now, he could be lying. He could be trying to say that because there's a lot of movies that'll do that where like, oh, these geniuses, they're so smart that they remember being in the womb. So he might be playing that card, but we'll pretend or we'll just believe him in a sense. He's like saying, yeah, he's got memories from the womb without context. His hand was his friend. What a trip that would be. What an amazing thing. And what an amazing thing to acknowledge about consciousness is that so much of what we are, what we think we are, is just based on contextual memory. And without that, you exist as this, just the pure essence of awareness. That's a kind of a beautiful thing. And I thought that was kind of a spooky thing. But he might be throwing this out here as leverage to say, oh, what I'm saying might sound crazier to you, but just believe me. Because if you believe me, it makes the odds of this reality manifesting, or the reality I want manifesting, even more likely.
Because apparently I've been interested in it at a given time. And I came out and I was born. The first thing I thought about when I was 5 years old, I was obsessed with bubbles. I was like, why does a bubble take the shape of a ball? Why not a square or a triangle? And I would go and try and make square or triangular bubbles. And you can never do it because it turns out everything expands as a sphere and everything contracts in geometric form. You drop a pebble into the pond, it expands in a perfect sphere unless there's something in the way. The moment it hits the edge of the shore and starts to come back, it's the contracting waves that hit the expanding waves that creates the initial geometry.
Yeah, he's saying
everything expands as a sphere, everything contracts in
reality. Cool.
Geometry and fits.
Agree.
Basically. So what I'm saying, and what I tried to tell you guys earlier, this is not your first time, it's not your first rodeo, and it won't be your last rodeo. Don't panic in this life. You can actually, there's no sense of death. Everything goes to sleep and it wakes back up again. Refolds and unfolds, refolds and unfolds. And if you're wise, if you're careful, because you can remember conscious moments in your life, can't you? You can remember moments when you're like, wait a minute, I'm in a bigger space than just this little body right here. You become fully aware of everything around you. And if you quiet yourself, you can think about those things. Well, apparently I did that at the last passage because when I came into this life, I woke up, remember, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. And the first thing I did was work out the flower of life. When I was 6 years old, I started making these pieces. What Vinci tried to do at 80, I did at 6 years old because I'd been working on it perhaps from a past life. Now, I'm not trying to say I'm crazy or this reincarnation or anything, but we know that energy does not die. Energy just reboots itself and reboots itself. So we are eternal. So stop panicking, thinking your life is over. You've done this trillions of times. You'll get good at it and we'll be perfect one time if we get conscious. But we have to get conscious. Because I think I'm the smartest man in the world that I figured out what nobody else in the world could figure out. With Aristotle, with
I agree. We continue on forever and ever as different forms. When you die, you are losing that perspective memory. But inevitably, you will awaken as something else, just as you always have and always will throughout all of time. I do believe that, as wild as that is. I absolutely believe that that's what's going on. And one of the greatest gifts of death is the loss of memory. Because imagine if you really were, I don't believe it's as linear as that, as an I, as this being has been manifested in many different forms, creating a chain of like a soul that had been in different bodies. I don't believe that as I believe that we are all the same soul, more like that. All the same soul manifesting fractions of itself all the time in different spaces, in different forms, with different capacities, different physical capacities, and memory is one of those things. And so I think it's really cool and really true that I agree, you should not cling too much, because guess what? As the Buddhists believe with samsara, we've been doing this forever, and we're going to be doing it beyond that and beyond that. And maybe if you search hard enough or look within deep enough, you will escape samsara. Maybe. But you know, don't worry about it, because it's a big game. We've been playing this for a while, and anything that ails you will be forgotten in your next round. So then you'll have new things to worry about.
No, Pythagoras, all of them tried to figure this out. But I know I am not smarter than these men. So I know that there's something to the consciousness of carrying things through, because the information and knowledge that I have, I didn't go to school. I had a 1.6 grade point average graduating from high school because I had other things to do. But this information kind of educated me along the way because I was born into it. And now I have the pieces to follow it, and hopefully Chris and maybe Oxford and some of it will do some of the vetting for these things, and we can change the world. But if not, I'll keep doing it, and I'll do it in the next lifetime. If not this one, the next lifetime after that. Just remember, and another thing, don't forget, you know, you go from positive to negative, everything polarizes positive to negative, then more than likely, with each lifetime, male to female, if the universe is consistent. I think it is.
Great. Thank you for that question. Yeah, let's go to you.
I look forward to being a girl next round.
Thank you very much for talking to us. And also, your view on consciousness and energy sounds very similar to what Dr. Robert Lanza proposes in biocentrism. So that may be of interest to you if you haven't read that text. But about 5 years ago, you spoke about harmonic wave sequencing and how that could
Harmonic wave resequencing.
Resequencing, and how that could possibly solve cancer or genetic ailments within the next 5 years. I think that was about 5 years ago. So is there much progress on that? And how do you propose that this resequencing would actually recode people's genetics in order to prevent them from getting ailments?
Simple. Our DNA is made up of what? 5 elements,
Simple.
right? Hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and oxygen. You know how they're arranged? The phosphorus sits right here in the middle, and you've got 4 oxygen atoms surrounding it. Then there's another phosphorus, 2 more oxygen atoms. Now these are the legs of that double helix. These are the legs. Now the latter steps on it, they become the adenine, the guanine, the cytosine, and thymine, the ATCGs. It turns out hydrogen, they used to think that energy, the body transferred or understood the energy information through electricity. They're finding out it's through frequency. Well, guess what hydrogen sounds like? It's a key of E. Guess what, and it's the color yellow. That's what proper physics gets you to. Oxygen is a chartreuse, and it's the key of F over F sharp. Now, they used to, like I said, information used to be thought about as just electrical information passing on. But I got a question for you. Have you ever been at a party with some of your friends you ain't seen in 10 years, but y'all like 14, you hung out as a song that came on, and everybody got up and was live at that moment. Now, say 10 years later, you got a friend with you. He's a good guy, but he wasn't there when me and my boys formed this. So when that song comes on, our DNA tightens. There's a particular song, a scale in the genome for each and every one of us. Now, when that song is played, when your particular prime resonant frequency is played, guess what happens? Your DNA celebrates and tightens. Everything else gets pushed out. Harmonic wave resequencing. The carbon is also the key of E in yellow. The nitrogen is G. And all these play a song. So say that the F over F sharps of the oxygen, the green, is only hitting at an F. Why? Because there's another frequency coming in from a generator over there. That's changing and causing it to change. So this F now hits the oxygen. And when it hits, the F hits the carbon. So instead of hitting as an F sharp, it hits as an F. So when it hits the carbon and an E, it doesn't hit it quite right, so the domino don't file right. So the next domino hits wrong. And so now we have malformation happening within our DNA because the frequencies are being pushed off. But when we hear our tone, we tighten back up. So yeah, I'm in the process of.
I agree with a lot of that. There's so many things happening to us as structures in reality. These waves, we are wave packets of energy that are condensed ourselves. And we're dealing with frequencies or waves in space-time that are going through us all the time. And X-rays actually damage DNA, and then anything, I believe, I'm not sure if it's faster or slower wavelengths. I'm not sure about that. Also damage our DNA and our cells. And it can mess up all sorts of things because this energy resonates with parts of us that are also energy. So it does create a lot of trouble. But our bodies, every single piece of us, every single cell is loaded with so much intelligence and complexity that it navigates around that. It's kind of like painting a picture on a canvas that is always wiggling. That's kind of like what life is always doing. It's painting the picture that is you in a world that is consistently shifting and changing. And the greatest illusion of all is that the paint that makes you up is the canvas, is not the canvas. That's the illusion. No, you are the canvas too. That's the greatest thing. But again, as egos existing in the world, as these creatures existing in this world, we are just a piece of the canvas. Still part of all of it, but we're just a piece. And Terrence is still going off like, man, I'm the canvas. I'm going to change mathematics. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Building a harmonic wave resequencer with another doctor who has been able to successfully.
Another doctor has been able to successfully cure cancer is about what he's about to say.
Cure AIDS and cancer.
AIDS and cancer. Remember earlier when I was talking about lies slowly shifting, creating a reality, and if you're not careful with that, the bigger the lie and tries to challenge reality, you end up hurting a lot of people? Well, maybe he didn't really hurt anybody physically, but mentally he did. There's how many people have listened to this and have thought, oh my God, I have cancer now. Terrence Howard has got the answer for me. Terrence is onto something. Let's find out. This was 6 years ago. He's claiming that he can cure AIDS and cancer. He knows a guy that can do it. So this comes back to the beginning of the video when I was trying to talk about his intention. His intention is to be a god. That's his intention. His intention right now is to captivate the audience with occult knowledge that will help them create the reality that he desires inside, which is him being the savior and answering all of our problems. But it's absolutely disgusting to me for him to stand in a room and say with conviction like that, oh yeah, we got that figured out, with people who are in that room that are actively trying to figure that out. There are people in that room that are like, I want to cure a disease. And God bless them for being there and doing that. God bless them for caring about stuff to that degree and doing that. But I don't see a man that cares about stuff to that degree. I see somebody who cares about being God. That's what I see.
It's well underway. But I want you guys to understand how that works. It's so simple. You do not need to tear the human body apart. And all you can do is use frequency to bring it back to its normal space.
Guys, curing AIDS and cancer is so simple. If we just believed it hard enough. It's so simple.
Great, thank you for that question. Yeah, let's go to you.
Thank you so much. I've always been interested in acting, so it's pretty cool to be in the presence of an actor. But my question actually has to do with your numbers theory. So if by your logic you say 1 times 1...
Like, yeah, you're an actor, but, you know, I'm here for the numbers. This is one of those people trying to solve those problems. One of those people trying to solve the real problems going on. Asking this guy who has no evidence to prove anything that he is saying. He has no way of showing that if you use the inputs that he's providing, that he's going to dramatically change results of actual reality, as in curing cancer with harmonics and frequencies and stuff like that, curing AIDS with that. It might be able to be done, but he does not know how to do it. I assure you.
Equals 2. Are you insinuating that 1 times 0 then equals 1?
Equals 1. Well, that's what we were saying with the identity principle. The identity property, it says that 1 times nothing equals nothing. Something. So now you have the laws of physics have to now adjust because something just disappeared. Conservation of energy. Energy can't be created or destroyed. So if 1 times...
It's not an apple times no apples. That's where we're at. It's one instance of no apples. So we're saying they're two different things. These numbers may just be numbers in the world of numbers. But when we do bring the numbers down to reality and we say, okay, we're talking about instances of things happening, which may not be physical, right? But it is something that matters to us with our calculations. Time seems to be something that is important in predicting things. So we'll say this happens as 1 time times this thing, this mass, which we just don't have. So it ends up being nothing. You end up getting nothing. So within the same time passing, you end up with nothing. That's what we're trying to say, is that he's trying to say that all the numbers are all the same things. But no, each number has its own meaning that you assign to the problem in order to create predictions in reality.
0 equals 0, then what happened to the energy of the 1? Isn't that the same problem that Stephen Hawking was talking about with the event horizon?
The energy of the 1. The 1 isn't represented as energy. It's represented as an instance of time. So I remember when I was young, I learned to multiply very late. Okay. I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't really care about school that much. And I remember the day that I learned how multiplication worked was the teacher looked at us and she said, groups of X. This times multiplication symbol, just say it's groups of. So if you have 2 times 4, it is 2 groups of 4, which gives you 8, right? And the 4 would be things, right? And he's saying that this, we're not talking about instances of things. We're talking about things times itself, which they're going to question.
And the information going in and still being present, that conflict that was started, well, that's because of the math. The principles in the math are not founded on truth. It's not founded on substance. The identity principle, anything times 0 is 0, and anything times 1 is 1. Where is that number? Where is that exemplified in nature or in universal phenomena? Is it? Do you see that?
So then, are you saying that 1 times 5 would be 6?
Yes. Well, what does it say in the associative and commutative thing?
So you're
if A and B
proposing...
are positive integers, it says if A and B are positive integers, A is to be added to itself as many times as is indicated by units in B.
So you're not proposing an audit, you're proposing like a reconstruction of the way we understand math.
You know what's interesting? In 1856, a man from Liverpool named Richard Dover Statter challenged the Dewey Decimal System and said that it was wrong and created an entirely new system to show how it can be brought into correction. So I'm not the first person to say this. There's a number of people did it, but look up Richard Dover Statter. Try and find him. You won't find him because he's been erased from history almost. But what is the thing called, honey?
I come to find that things get erased because they're not useful. Very much like evolution. You see species die out because they're no longer functional in the environment that they're in. You don't know of a lot of these people because they don't create functional, practical results for anybody, which is the point of this channel. So if you've gotten this far, please subscribe to the channel because we are about practical, spiritual, occult wisdom. Let's proceed, as he calls this lady over here, honey, again. I say, hey there, honey. You go ahead and talk. You're on my side. You're not sitting here telling me that I'm wrong or questioning me, even though supposedly I came here to be questioned.
Dewey Decimal System as a whole, the Dewey Decimal System as a whole, and you will see that we are headed to, the Titanic is headed to an iceberg over there with our numbers. If we don't make a change soon, we're going to crash as a species because our math needs to work in order for our science and our future to develop.
Oh my God.
Sorry, one last question.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Pet peeve of mine is when I hear anybody say anything about doom. Like we're certain doom is coming. There's no evidence that they can give you to show you that this doom is coming. They can't even really articulate clearly what the doom is or what it looks like, or they'll just say that. They'll say, "Oh, the end is coming." It's like I hate that. I hate hearing it. Every time I hear it, I want to throw out everything that anyone has said prior to that as soon as I hear anything like that. Because for me, from my bit of background with psychology, I know what that's doing. You're instilling fear in other people so they'll take you seriously. But like I said before, his motive, if he showed up showing that he could predict where a certain, let's say a cosmic entity is going to land in certain years using his math and could prove that, then that'd be a different story. If he showed up with an invention creating infinite energy, that would be something. If he could actually do anything with this, if he showed you somebody he cured with cancer using frequency resonation or whatever he's talking about, harmonics, that would be different, but that's not what he's doing. And the same person who can't show up with any evidence of him actually using this math, this magic to shape reality differently, is also is the same person is also telling you doom is coming, because he's really like, just believe me, okay, believe me. And it's something else, and he needs to be humbled, I think.
I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you think it's our do you think that the reason that we have like economic crises, for example, is because we are not understanding our numbers correctly according to your theory?
Well, I think we have an economic problem because we are the only creatures in this universe that use currency. There are no other creatures that use currency in order to exist. Why is it that we chose this strange thing that isn't even real? Other creatures, they drink water, they eat fruit, they eat other animals. We exchange with currency, and our system of exchanging with currency is flawed because of greed. There's not like if 1 times 1 equals 2, we've got an equilibrium of balance. 1 times 1 equals 1, you've got loss. When 1 times 1 equals 3 or more, you're talking about over unity and supersymmetry, and that's how you get the universe to work for you. Instead of using just the solar voltaics off of it, you also use the piezoelectric effects of it. You use other things to make greater unity. But 1 times 1 equaling 1, when it could also equal pound times a pound equaling a pound, when it could also equal $4 or $10 or $100.
I like how he talks about currency being an invention. He's right. That's an interesting thing. And what the power of currency is that when you get currency, it represents potential to be anything else that you want it to be. And the real trouble is making sure the values of things remain true. That's the real trouble with currency. But it's the same trouble you would have if you were a potato farmer trading 4 potatoes for maybe a blanket. Is 4 potatoes enough for the blanket? Well, it depends on the person selling that blanket if 4 potatoes is enough. It doesn't change the problem. Is it $4 for the blanket? Like you see, it doesn't change the problem. So you start to get a market going on once everybody starts to agree how many potatoes equal a blanket. In this case, how many dollars equal a thing. And then again, he goes on to talk about multiplication as squaring things, when that's not what we're doing when we're multiplying. We're making groups of instances of a thing.
Does that make sense to you? Do you think the banks are abusing that? What's a quarter times a quarter? If I ask anybody in this room, what's a quarter times a quarter? That's 25 times 25. The computer will the calculator will tell you 6.25 cents. But we know 25 pence times 25 pence is 625 pence. That's 6 pounds and 25 pence, but the computer or the banks only have to give you 6.25 cents reference for it. Well, let's say you put a dime times a dime. Oh, let me get this out. Say you put a dime times a dime. You put that in your calculator, it says 1 cent. 0.10 times 0.10 is 1 cent. But we know a dime times a dime is a whole dollar. But the bank gives us money based on that evaluation. Is that fair? And I might get shot about talking about this right now, but I've got a book coming out called Does a dollar times a dollar equal a dollar, or does a dollar times a dollar equal $2? And in the process, not only do I explain the death of the platonic solids, but I also introduce the new Terrian wave conjugations that replace this Euclidean way of life and gives us a three-dimensional way of seeing the world. That's what I'm saying. Do you want to see the world in 2D or do you want to see it in 3D?
Do you want to see it in the Terrence McKenna, in the Terrence Howard way? These Terrences are really up some. I might name my kid Terrence someday because they're Terrences are really popular in the spiritual world. Okay, but man, do you want to see a world in 3D? You just want to stick to that paper, sucker. It's hard out here for a pimp. All right. Just fucking crazy.
Thank you.
Because our math right now is 2D. Our math is black and white and stick figures. I want the world in multicolor spectral vision.
Man, dude, I've seen people that will take a piece of paper and draw straight lines on it and shit. And then they'll go build shelves that fit through my door. Like, they will build shelves that actually fit through my front door. Bookshelves. I had a guy build a bookshelf before, and this dude used paper and lines, straight lines, and he used math. And he actually, that was what's crazy is using that math in that one dimension. Somehow it transmuted to the third dimension, and he actually fit that bookshelf through my door. Crazy. So now I got a bookshelf. Stop living in 2D.
That's it? I go home?
I think we have time for one more.
Quit pressuring me.
Who speaks up first? This dude, his energy is there. Go.
This dude.
Strong energy too, man, but...
You said that a dollar times a dollar is $2?
Huh?
You said that, say, a pound times a pound is 2 pounds?
A pound times a pound should be 2 pounds.
This guy's setting him up. He picked him because he looked probably soft. He's like, this guy's going to challenge me? Oh, yeah. Watch out. The quiet ones will challenge you.
Yeah, but when you multiply those two things together, you get a pound squared.
A
pound squared. That's what he's saying. You see, it makes no sense to be multiplying the same type of thing times itself. It makes no sense. If you do it with space, then you end up with cubed space. You end up, if you do it with inches, for example, you get square inches, and then you continue on, you get cubes. You actually get volumes that represent the dimensions. And the math goes on further, and that's why they think there's way more than 3 or 4 dimensions. They think there's more like 8 or 11 different dimensions we can't even perceive. So the math takes us, he's talking about, man, get your math right, you're in straight lines. Like, the math of the straight line world is telling us that there are worlds way beyond this 3 dimension already. And he's asking, like, a pence times a pence is a pence squared. There's no such thing as a pence squared. That's a higher dimension of currency than maybe the gods trade in pence squared and pence cubed. But it doesn't make sense. I'm really only really asking, how many instances of pences am I getting? I'm not timesing pences times pences. I'm not timesing my dollars times dollars. I'm asking how many instances of dollars are going to happen. That's what I'm asking. But, oh man, I'm thinking in straight lines.
Yeah.
But the unit gets squared as well.
1 squared?
You gotta think round corners, my friend. You and I think in straight lines. Terrence Howard sees round corners, brah. Wake up.
Will you use the mic? So I can hear you.
So you're saying 1 pound times 1 pound is equal to 2 pounds, but it's 1 pound squared, which doesn't make any sense because you've got a squared unit.
Squared. 1 pound squared.
Can you divide pounds? Can you divide money? If you can divide it, you can multiply.
You can divide it. You can say that there's several, I need this amount of money divided by these instances. I need my 10, how many instances can I make out of my $10, right? How many instances? If I broke them down into dollar bills, I could have 10 instances. So it'd be 1. Do you know what I mean? So we're not talking about things times itself. It makes no sense to do that. I digress.
What, a pound times a pound? What, a pound squared? 2 pounds? That 2 pound, 1 squared? Well, it's funny. I actually patented 1 squared. All these things that I showed you guys, I patented all these things.
Patented them.
You know,
So you know he's a god. When you use these equations in the future, you can throw out all that trash from Da Vinci and all those guys that were before him. And you can use the Howard loops from here on because it's patent. All right. He had to do it first before any government patented this, before any of those guys figured this out. He had to make sure he put his name on it so you know who the savior is.
why I patented them? Because in 1926, a man named Walter Russell wrote a book called The Universal One, and in it he introduced an entirely new periodic table. And there he introduced the two heavy water elements, and then plutonium and deuterium. Both of those, all four of those elements that had never been discovered, he sent out to 800 different universities in his book. 2 years later, he watched as other people came and got Nobel Prizes for his work. Why? Because he didn't patent it. He didn't copyright it. So I copywrote all these things and patented all these things before bringing them to you. They are true, and I think there's some value to them. I don't know why I said that. Did I?
This is him getting nervous immediately after telling a lie. That is what that was. What you just saw. We can take that back and take a look. He said, why did I just say that? Why did you lie?
All these things that I showed you guys, I patented all these things.
Wow.
You know why I patented them? Because in 1926, a man named Walter Russell wrote a book called The Universal One, and in it he introduced an entirely new periodic table. And there he introduced the two heavy water elements, and then plutonium and deuterium. Both of those, all four of those elements that had never been discovered, he sent out to 800 different universities in his book. 2 years later, he watched as other people came and got Nobel Prizes for his work.
Yeah,
why? Because he didn't patent it. He didn't copyright it. So I copywrote all these things and patented all these things before bringing them to you. They are true, and I think there's some value to them. I don't know why I said that. Did I?
Why is it?
Yeah, it's a decimal system that's off. The money is, there's nothing wrong with the money, but how we deal with the money. But if you can divide money, you can multiply it. It works hand in hand. Okay, or you can't see that. You can't see dividing money.
It's a matter of definition. If you define, it's a matter of definition. A pound squared is
Can't
not.
see that. Stupid students, your children. Been working on this 30 years. Can't see that?
Or unit defined.
A pound squared.
If you multiply by mathematical convention, if you multiply 1 pound by 1 pound, same as if you multiply 1 meter by 1 meter, it should be 1 pound squared or 1 square
It
meter.
becomes 2. Why does it become 1 pound squared? Is 2, isn't it? Now, if you look at it, remember what I just said about the associative and commutative laws. It says A is to be added to itself as many times as its units in B. And the only thing that prevents that is the identity element that sits up and says, no, the Jim Crow law sits. Black people sit in the back of the bus because that's what the law says, without even having a foundation for it. 1 times 1 times any number is that number, without a foundation, with no principle. It just says it.
But if you go by your logic and you say 1 times 1 is 2, 1 times 2 is 3, and then how would you define 2 times 4? Is that's
That stays, all that remains the same. Anything with 1, just add 1. The first rule of
okay, then where's
multiplication.
the difference between addition and multiplication?
Well, multiplication is what? Exaggerated addition. Isn't it?
But isn't it a matter of mathematical convention?
What is?
If it was defined, it could have been defined differently, but logical, it makes the most
Mr.
sense.
Mike,
Sorry. Is it a matter of mathematical convention? If you define beforehand that something, like, logically, it makes the most sense that 1 times 1, if you have 1 laptop, 1 times a laptop is 1 laptop, that makes more sense than you say it's 2 laptops.
Well, now if you
and
said-
then that's where mathematical convention comes in. And that's like most, like, large part of math is convention. It's how it happens.
Convention. Do you see what she's saying? She's like, a lot of this is about the rules of actually using this tool of math. And that's one of the things, is that you're adding the context to the variables you're playing with. You're not timesing a laptop times a laptop. The laptop is being times by instances of its existence. That's what we're trying to measure when we're playing this. And you can change it. You can multiply anything by anything, and then you end up with all sorts of carried numbers going on, playing around to annotate the craziness going on. But I digress again.
Has been defined. It's a matter of definition.
And it's wonderful. The convention is all right if the material and the information being shared in the convention is true. But when you're talking about dogma being added in with that thing that I showed you, did you look at the square root of 2? Do you think that that's a loop? That's a natural thing with the square root of 2? Did you believe that?
Pi, it's like not a mathematical.
No, it's not the same though. It's not the same with pi. What we just did, we multiplied it, we cubed the number, and then we divided it by 2, and we cubed it again and divided it by 2, and we did that a number of times, and that number still remained the same exact number, which we know cannot happen. It's right there, and that's what they say is the difference between. That's what they say allows 1 times 1 to equal 1, because 1.414213562373095 ... is the square root of 2. But we know that that's not the case because it's illogical. That loop makes it.
So he knew he was going to have trouble sharing this information. So he memorized that. He took the time to memorize that number so he could read it off fast and to create an illusion that he knows more than he does. When all that he really knows is what that equals, and it's the proper amount as far as I'm concerned. It's important to note, my friends, that no matter how bad I want him to be true, I want him to be correct. When I first watched this, I wanted him to be correct. I was like, this is awesome. He's going to figure out new math that's going to create infinite energy and help save the world, get rid of money and all this cool stuff. But at the end of the day, all of it is speculation until you literally can fit a shelf through my door. You know what I'm saying? Till you can literally make changes with your math in reality, or make predictions of things coming true, or approximations. Because sure, there's no such thing as an absolute true prediction of how much energy something has got, or is going to have, or potential is going to have. We all play with approximations, and the approximations are useful. And that's why we have this thing called tolerance. Okay. We know that we're putting straight lines on a curved world, which is why we need tolerances for things. Things change. Things don't go precisely the way we ever really want them to. But luckily for all of us, we live in a close enough world, a good enough world. Maybe I am ignorant. Maybe I don't know. And maybe Terrence is going to take us from a close enough world to a pure, true, precise world. But I will not believe that until I see him actually do the shit he's saying that he's going to do, which is cure cancer. And on top of that, if you haven't followed, he's went to Uganda as well. He was talking about creating hydrogen, new energy out of hydrogen there, and creating new forms of flight that he has patented. And guess what? None of this stuff has actually worked, and none of it has actually been functional, and none of it has spared any other human being from suffering, especially those who have listened to this 6 years ago and actually believed it was going to help save them. So many people have died believing that this was going to go somewhere, and all he did was waste everyone's time so that he could pose himself in the position of a god. And I believe that he has been humbled. That's why we probably don't hear too much from him anymore. That's the end today. Thank you for joining us on this journey. It is important to make sure that when you are listening to anybody sharing spiritual information with you, that they've got evidence showing that the things that they're saying are actually true, and that you actually know their motivation for sharing it with you. There's a lot of people that teach manifestation, that teach spirituality. All the abundance that you see in their life is a direct output from people sending them money and believing in them, not actually producing results for people. It's important to know. It's important to know. And it's important to know that people will believe their own bullshit if their bullshit somehow gets them the right thing that they wanted the whole time. And when you're dealing with people like this guy, you're dealing with people who are trying to be God, and they will fail every time. They will fail. And once you have that bias stacked up where you come from a place which is horrible, that he came from a place where he had to wear girl clothes as a little boy in the hood and had to lie to become an actor. It's horrible. But what's wonderful is that he did transmute to the best of his abilities where he is now. But he ain't nobody transmuting past death. Nobody's getting rid of that. Never happening. You're not going to rise above suffering because it's all you. You cannot rise beyond yourself. My friends, thank you for being here. And I thank you so very deeply for helping us share practical, spiritual, occult wisdom.